While watching a horror flick, it's important to know some characters are there to be cannon fodder. However, it's a different story when it comes to the hero. The good guy is layered in so much plot armor, they should be able to shuffle off anything. But things don't always fare well for our knight in shining armor. Despite the main character's best efforts, they can fail to prevent the apocalypse, protect their loved ones, or save their own skin. Now, this isn't the only video we have on this topic, but there were just so many more to talk about. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, here with 10 more worst fates suffered by heroes in horror movies. Number 10. Ash Williams, Army of Darkness. Following the events of Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness kicks off with Ash Williams being cast into medieval Europe, where he faces a new legion of Deadites. After that threat is vanquished, the chainsaw-armed warrior is transported back to his own time, wrapping up the franchise nicely. At least that's the canonical ending of the Evil Dead trilogy. However, Army of Darkness was meant to end on a real sour note. In the original climax, the wise man gives Ash a potion that allows him to sleep 100 years for every drop he drinks. To wake up in his time period, Ash must consume 6 drops. Since Ash is a massive idiot, he consumes 7 drops by mistake. Awaking in the 2090s, Ash looks around at his surroundings only to see all of human civilization has collapsed. Curling up in a ball, Ash screams how he's slept too long before the screen cuts to black. After all the evil that Ash has faced and defeated, it's pretty embarrassing how the boomstick-blasting store clerk was finally undone by his greatest enemy, his own stupidity. Number 9. David Mills, Seven. In Seven, homicide detectives Somerset and Mills are tasked with bringing down a psychopath called John Doe, who uses a 7 deadly sins motif to kill his victims. After 5 people are slaughtered, Doe suddenly surrenders to the police. He then orders Somerset and Mills to follow him to a specific location where they should find the last 2 victims, Envy and Wrath. After arriving at their destination, a delivery van drops a box by the detective's feet, and when Somerset inspects it, he finds the package contains the head of Mills' pregnant wife. Doe explains how he killed her out of envy, which will encourage Mills to succumb to wrath and shoot him dead. Failing to talk Mills down, Somerset is forced to watch his partner blow Doe's brains out. Even though it looks like Mills' wife has been avenged, Doe got exactly what he wanted. Not only did he claim all 7 victims, Mills lost his wife and unborn child. And what's worse is Mills is arrested immediately after since he executed an unarmed convict. Mills has to spend the rest of his days incarcerated, knowing full well that the murderer of his wife and child won. Number 8. Teddy Daniels, Shutter Island. In Shutter Island, US Marshal Teddy Daniels opens an investigation in Ashcliffe Hospital after learning a murderous inmate called Andrew Ladis has gone missing. As Teddy uncovers more clues, he becomes convinced the facilitator, John Corley, is hiding a terrible secret about the institution. Although Teddy's suspicions are correct, the truth is much more disturbing than he expected. Over time, Corley reveals he concocted this entire scenario so Teddy would realize he is the missing inmate Andrew Ladis. After killing his wife, Andrew's mind snapped, causing him to invent a new personality called Teddy Daniels. Andrew eventually comes around to this explanation, though he seems to mentally regress soon after, once again believing he is Teddy. Acknowledging Andrew is a lost cause, Corley is left with no choice but to have him lobotomized. Just before the procedure, Teddy asks his psychiatrist whether it's worse to live as a monster or to die as a good man. With this simple exchange, it's heavily implied that Andrew hasn't reverted to his alternate personality and instead has voluntarily agreed to the lobotomy since he can't live with himself. Number 7. Elsa, Splice. In this Frankenstein-inspired thriller, unruly biologists Elsa and Clive create a new life form by splicing human and animal DNA. This one-of-a-kind creature, Dren, proves to be astoundingly adaptable and intelligent, much to Elsa's delight. But as Dren's capabilities grow, so does its ambitions. After Dren begins lashing out, the 2 scientists decide to terminate the specimen. Enraged, Dren slaughters several facility workers, including Clive. Dren is killed during the climax, but not before it forces itself on Elsa, impregnating her. After Dren caused Elsa to lose her reputation, her funding, and her partner, the last thing she wants to do is bring another creature like that into the world. However, Elsa's benefactors offer her a hefty sum to keep the baby, knowing its unique genetic structure will revolutionize the scientific community. With her reputation in tatters and career in the toilet, Elsa has no choice but to agree to her company's terms. Although it's uncertain what happened to Dren's offspring, it must be devastating that Elsa Elsa wasn't able to terminate it, since it will remain a constant reminder of the horrors she endured. Number 6. Rex, the Vanishing. In The Vanishing, young couple Rex and Saskia stop at a rest area to get some gas. While Rex is occupied, his girlfriend is abducted by a self-admitted sociopath, Raymond. The story then cuts to 3 years later, with Rex still trying to find out what happened to his partner. Raymond toys with him, agreeing to meet Rex on multiple occasions but never showing up. Wanting to take the mind games to another level, Raymond confronts Rex, promising to tell him what happened to Saskia. After driving to an undisclosed location, Raymond offers Rex drugged coffee, telling him he'll learn everything if he drinks it. Considering Raymond as an insane murderer, it would be stupid for Rex to accept this proposal. But since Rex's obsession over Saskia has become all-consuming, he chugs the coffee down, causing him to pass out. When he awakens later, Rex finds himself locked inside a sealed coffin, and despite his best efforts to break out, he asphyxiates to death. Although it'd be awful for anyone to acknowledge their imminent death, it must be immeasurably worse for Rex. In his final moments, he realised Raymond killed Saskia shortly after abducting her, meaning his search for her over the last 3 years was pointless. Not only that, he allowed himself to be manipulated by the murderer, who got away scot-free. Number 5. Tim Russell, Oculus. In Oculus, siblings Kaylee and Tim Russell are left traumatized when their father inexplicably murders their mother. 10 years later, Kaylee returns to the old house with Tim, trying to convince him their dad's actions were caused by his haunted mirror. Tim refuses to believe Kaylee's claims, adamant there's no supernatural explanation why their father was driven to murder. Although Kaylee has set up a swinging anchor to smash their dad's mirror to pieces, she wants to prove her theory to Tim before destroying it. Throughout the night, the mirror compels the Russells to hallucinate, causing Tim to slowly but surely realise Kaylee was right all along. Convinced the mirror is evil, Tim activates the anchor to destroy it. Sadly, Tim doesn't realise the mirror has lured Kaylee towards it at this moment, causing the anchor to impale her. Just to really rub salt on the wounds, Tim's murder was caught on film, giving him zero alibi. After he's arrested by the police, Tim is inconsolable, fully aware there's no way to convince anyone he's innocent. What's worse is he knows there's nothing to stop the mirror from killing and incriminating more hapless victims in the future. Number 4. Pedro, When Evil Lurks. Psychological horror When Evil Lurks centers around a pair of demon-hunting brothers. The so-called cleaners are tasked with eliminating possessed people called rottens before they give birth to malevolent spirits. When Pedro fails to destroy a rotten, he leaves town with his brother, hoping to avoid the demon's wrath. Pedro soon acknowledges he can't escape the dark entity since it possesses people around him, leading to the death of his daughter, son, and ex-wife. Realizing the nightmare will never end while the rotten lives, Pedro tracks it down to a nearby school. Sadly, the possessed students trick Pedro into leaving the room long enough for it to give birth to the demon. The malevolent entity places a permanent mark on Pedro's forehead as a constant reminder of his failure. Just when it seems like things couldn't possibly get worse, he returns home to learn his other son has been possessed, compelling him to eat Pedro's mother. Not only has Pedro lost everything he ever cared about, none of this would have happened if he'd just killed the rotten when he had the chance. Number 3. Leon, the Midnight Meat Train. This Clive Barker adaptation follows inspiring photographer Leon, who's desperate to make a name for himself. When he takes a picture of a woman immediately before she's murdered on a train, Leon obsesses over hunting down the killer, Mahogany. Even though the subway butcher has taken countless lives, the police refuse to help, urging Leon to take Mahogany down himself. After slaying the monstrous serial killer, Leon believes the bloodshed is finally over. But since this story comes from the same mind behind Hellraiser, it's no surprise the Midnight Meat Train takes a really twisted turn in the third act. Just as it looks like Leon has won, the conductor appears, revealing Mahogany wasn't just a random psycho. In reality, he was a ritual killer who fed his victims to an ancient reptilian race to deter them from venturing to the surface. The conductor informs Leon that he must take the mantle of the subway butcher, since he killed the previous one. Forced to give up his old life, Leon must now slaughter, mutilate, and feed innocent people to monsters for the rest of his life. Ironically, Leon became the very evil he was trying to destroy. Number 2. Wallace Tusk. Even though monsters are unsettling, the idea that a regular person can turn into one is far more frightening. There are plenty of creature features that explore this notion, including The Fly, The Thing, and An American Werewolf in London. However, few films have shown the true horror of this predicament as much as Kevin Smith's Tusk. Even though the movie is more a dark comedy than a true horror, it's sure to leave anyone rattled. After deranged seaman Howard lures podcaster Wallace to his house, he mutilates his body, severs his limbs, grafts Wallace's femurs onto his face to resemble tusks, and drapes him in a skin suit so that he resembles a walrus. In the climax, Wallace's girlfriend Allie and friend Teddy locate him, moments after he kills Howard. Believing the traumatic experience has destroyed Wallace's personality, Teddy and Allie consider putting him out of his misery. Instead, they place Wallace in an animal sanctuary where he can live in peace. In the closing moments, a single tear appears in Wallace's eyes, proving he still has a trace of his humanity. This revelation makes Wallace's circumstances infinitely more depressing, since it means he remembers his former life and is aware he must remain as a monster forever. Number 1. Captain S.J. Miller, Event Horizon. Captain S.J. Miller from Event Horizon was always going to top this list, since he suffered the worst fate imaginable: hell. Even though the underworld is meant to be solely populated by sinners, Miller wound up in the fiery dimension by being a good Samaritan. Paul W.S. Anderson's cosmic horror starts with Miller and his crew arriving on an experimental starship called the Event Horizon, which has been missing for 7 years. The Event Horizon's designer, Dr. William Weir, explains to Miller how the vessel uses a teleportation device to traverse vast distances in space. After Miller and his team have several supernatural experiences, they realize the Event Horizon teleported to hell and back, allowing an evil spirit to possess the ship. After the craft corrupts Weir, he readies the teleporter, intending to send Miller's crew to hell. Moments before the portal opens, Miller activates a bomb that splits the ship in half, with his crew safely on the other side. Despite Miller's noble actions, he is unable to stop himself being cast into hell, where he will spend all of eternity being tortured.